back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shubhan John.
And I'm Diksha Bisla, and coming up on the show today, the US military carried out new overnight strikes in Iran, targeting a military site in Bandar Abbas, near the Strait of Hormuz. Now, US also shot down 4 Iranian attack drones that posed a threat in the region. US maintains that the strikes were defensive in nature to maintain the ceasefire. We're going to get to all the details on the show today. Stay tuned.
And also on World DNA, the Russia-Ukraine war hostilities have drastically escalated as the war is already in its 5th year. In the latest, Russian drones struck the southern port city of Odessa as Russia has warned of systematic strikes on Ukrainian command centers and drone sites. We'll bring you the latest on that. Let's start with the headlines first.
US military says it struck a suspected drug trafficking boat in Eastern Pacific, killing 2 men, as part of an ongoing anti-smuggling campaign that has reportedly killed nearly 200 people since last September.
US media reports US military downs 4 Iranian drones and strikes control center in Bandar Abbas, preventing a 5th drone launch. While Iranian media reports fire after the IRGC confronts US oil tanker trying to transit the Hormuz Strait.
You know, we'll outweight him. He's got the midterms. I don't care about the midterms.
Donald Trump says he's not worried about midterm election pressure over the conflict with Iran, emphasizing that Iranian leaders miscalculated if they thought that elections would force him into a deal.
Oman will behave just like everybody else, who will have to blow him up.
US President says the Strait of Hormuz must stay open to all nations and warns Oman to behave or face US military action if it sides with Iran over the control of the waterway.
Israel's military issues an evacuation warning for residents of Tyre in southern Lebanon, saying it will carry out operations against Hezbollah in the area, urges people near certain buildings to move north of the Zahrani River.
Zelensky sends a letter to the US President Trump and Congress requesting increased support for Ukraine's air defenses, saying it is vital to ending war with Russia. Also warns the conflict should not be overshadowed by other global crises.
Marco Rubio says US will not allow Ebola-infected individuals to enter the country, as he emphasizes efforts to contain an outbreak in Central Africa, mainly in DR Congo. WHO reports over 1,000 suspected cases and 223 deaths.
Asian markets opened lower on Thursday as investors weighed mixed signals from Iran-US nuclear talks and uncertainty over the Strait of Hormuz. Overnight on Wall Street, the S&P 500 and Dow closed at fresh record highs. The US military carried out new overnight strikes in Iran, targeting a military site and even shot down 4 Iranian one-way attack drones.
These are the drones that posed a threat near the Strait of Hormuz, and this according to a US official. The official told Reuters that the targeted site was an Iranian ground control station in Bandar Abbas that was preparing to launch a 5th drone. The official described the action as measured, purely defensive, and intended to maintain the ceasefire.
Iranian media said that the Revolutionary Guards fired at an American oil tanker after it attempted to pass through the Strait of Hormuz with its radar system turned off, forcing it to stop and turn back.
Iranian media also said the US military struck a scorched earth area around Bandar Abbas and that the 3 explosions reported earlier were linked to the incident.
This follows an exchange of threats between Iran and US. Iran on Wednesday said a return to war was unlikely, but its military was nonetheless lying in the wait, while US President Trump threatened to finish the job if Tehran did not agree to a deal.
Well, US President Donald Trump has said that he is not satisfied yet with the terms of the deal being negotiated with Iran. He said that Tehran was very much intent on reaching an agreement to end the conflict, but added that so far they haven't gotten there.
Well, speaking to reporters at a cabinet meeting, the US president repeated Washington's willingness to resume strikes if a deal is not reached. His remarks came after Iranian state TV reported what it described as details of a draft agreement. It included US lifting its naval blockade on the Strait of Hormuz and on Iran's ports in return of Iran restoring commercial traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. It said that the management and routing of the vessels will be handled by Iran and Oman.
When asked whether he would accept such terms, Trump answered in negative. Listen to this.
Nobody's going to control it. We're going to watch over it. We'll watch over it, but nobody's going to control it. That's part of the negotiation that we have. They would like to control it. Nobody's going to control it. It's international waters, and Oman will behave just like everybody else, so we'll have to blow them up. They understand that. They'll be fine.
Now, the US president also denied reports that he was considering easing American sanctions on Tehran or was willing to allow Russia and China to remove Iran's highly enriched uranium.
The U.S. considering easing sanctions on Iran to allow Iran to sell its crude to market?
No, we're not talking about any easing of sanctions or giving money. No sanctions, no money, no nothing. We have control of money that they claim is theirs. We'll keep control of that money. When they behave properly and when they do what's right, we'll let them have their money. But right now, we're not doing that, and it's one thing is not contingent on the other.
All right, there's more on this. For that, we're now going to be joined by Dr. Charles Kupchan from Washington, D.C. He's a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations. Dr. Kupchan, thanks so much for making time. Always a pleasure speaking with you. And let's start right off. U.S. maintains that the strikes were defensive in nature to maintain the ceasefire. In your understanding, in your appreciation, can strikes ensure the continuity of a ceasefire as fragile as this?
Well, in many respects, we're seeing both sides violate the ceasefire. And I think part of what's going on here is that these uses of military force are in the service of trying to put pressure on the other side to make a deal at the negotiating table. If either side wanted to go back to war, they have more than the needed excuse to do so. But the fact that the United States is going after a particular drone, a particular speedboat, a particular radar at a port in Bandar Abbas, that suggests that this is more about coercive diplomacy. The message being sent is, we are still willing to use force, we will use force when we need to, but we'd rather settle this at the negotiating table. Will this turn into a wider war? Could something trigger a more tactical use of force into a wider return to full-scale bombing? Yes, but at least for now, both sides are holding back. Both sides are still pushing and hoping for a deal at the negotiating table.
Right, Dr. Kupchan, and now coming to the big headline, of course, US President Trump has said that he's not satisfied with the terms of the deal as of yet, but he has reiterated that Tehran is very much intent on agreeing to these terms, but agreeing to an agreement on the larger scale. But of course, we understand that concessions have to be made on both sides, and Donald Trump has said that the midterms are not going to put him on a spot where he would accept a bad deal, and they would not accept a deal at all instead of accepting a bad one. How are you reading into that?
Well, the offers that we hear the Iranians are making are not serious offers. They're about continued Iranian control of the Strait of Hormuz. They're about a U.S. withdrawal from the region. They're about America releasing frozen assets and dropping various economic sanctions that have been on the country for a very long time. And there's no mention of the core issues that the United States is looking to address, in particular, the nuclear issues, the future of enrichment, and what happens to the stockpile of highly enriched uranium. So in some respects, we're still not really out of the starting gate. We're still in a situation in which the two sides are talking past each other. I do think that on some level, when Trump says, hey, I'm not in a rush, I don't care about the midterms, I think he's sending the message that he's got time here. He thinks that time is on his side. But the reality is that he is in deep trouble politically, that this is a war that is very unpopular in the United States, that gas prices are continuing to rise. So I think the Iranians, to some extent, know that Trump is under a lot of political pressure. Trump knows the Iranians are under a lot of pressure because their economy is collapsing. I think that's one of the reasons that today they began to reopen the internet. They need an open internet for the economy to function. So both sides are trying to say, I'm tough, time is on my side, but both sides are facing a lot of pressure to try to make a deal sooner rather than later.
Dr. Gupchan, I think these sporadic issues of violence, it's twice in less than 3 days already, and more experts we've spoken to, they analyze as this amount of violence may continue, but a larger scale of war, it may not resurface because both sides are under pressure, as you correctly mentioned as well. We've heard that analysis from other analysts as well. Let's wait and watch how this one pans out. That was Dr. Charles Gupchan joining us here on World DNA.
Well, Russia's relentless assault on Ukraine continues, and in the latest, Russian drones struck the southern port city of Odessa.
And in that strike, 11 people were injured, including 2 children. The strikes damaged residential buildings and led to massive fires. Firefighters were seen battling the intense blaze. Those wounded include 6 men, 3 women, and 2 children aged 11 and 12.
Russia has struck Odessa during the daytime. A big fire erupted over an area of 1,800 square meters. A zoological shop, a liquor store, and a post office caught fire. At the moment, we know of 8 injured people, hospitalized. Unfortunately, a puppy that was in the shop has died.
Now, separately, in the heavily contested Donetsk region, Ukrainian troops and artillery targeted Russian dugouts with a domestically produced, self-propelled howitzer.
As Russia ramps up its missile attacks on Ukraine, Ukrainian President Zelensky has written to US President Trump. In the letter, Zelensky has urged Trump to provide more ammunition for the Patriot air defense systems to counter Russian ballistic missiles. Zelensky said that the pace at which it is receiving the Patriot missiles was no longer sufficient to match the scale of the threat facing Ukraine.
In a video message, Zelensky confirmed that he has written a letter to Trump and the US Congress. He said that while much of the world's attention is on the war in Iran, US must also listen to Ukraine and provide protection against Moscow's ballistic attacks. Listen to this.
This week, I drafted a special letter, a letter to the President of the United States and to Congress, and yesterday, the letter was sent to the relevant institutions in Washington. It is rare for leaders of another country to address both the President and Congress of the United States of America at the same time in a letter. But the situation now is such that we must act swiftly, and act effectively. It is important that America hears Ukraine.
And Zelensky's appeal underscores Ukraine's almost total reliance on its Western allies to down Russian missile barrages. The request comes just days after Moscow launched one of the biggest and deadliest combined missile and drone attacks on Kiev.
Amid these developments, Russian President Vladimir Putin has arrived in Kazakhstan on a two-day state visit. Kazakh President Tokayev met Putin on arrival in Astana, and during the visit, the two leaders are expected to sign a deal for the construction of a nuclear power plant in Kazakhstan. Putin will also take part in a summit meeting of the leaders of the Eurasian Economic Union.
The rapidly spreading Ebola outbreak continues to spark fear, with suspected Ebola cases continuing to rise.
And this, as now the official number is more than 900 and over 220 suspected deaths recorded. The WHO chief has called for immediate ceasefire in the eastern part of Democratic Republic of Congo, where a critical aid shortage persists.
The suspected infections and deaths have been reported across 3 eastern Congo provinces, including North and South Kivu. These are areas where armed groups continue to hinder access for health workers.
The authorities struggle to contain a growing outbreak in eastern Congo. Meanwhile, the WHO chief has called for immediate ceasefire in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo to help tackle the Ebola outbreak there.
Now, according to the WHO, the deadly Ebola outbreak currently has a case fatality rate under 25%. And this is much lower than in other recent outbreaks since it was declared in the DRC in mid-May. WHO has said states neighboring the DR Congo are at great danger from Ebola and should act immediately to counter the deadly virus.
Now, with the growing panic in the area, Uganda closed its border in an attempt to curb the spread. The measure, which also goes against WHO guidance, underscored growing fears of contagion in the East African country. But it has been taken to contain the situation to become like that of Congo.
Meanwhile, the United States says preventing Ebola from reaching American soil is now a top priority as the outbreak in Central Africa continues to worsen. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that Washington cannot and will not allow Ebola cases to enter the country.
Something else that I know is concerning people, because it's on the news, is Ebola. Our number one obligation, we're involved in foreign policy, but even our foreign policy, the number one priority of our foreign policy is to protect the American people. We cannot and will not allow any cases of Ebola to enter the United States.
As concerns grow, the United States is now also discussing plans with Kenya to set up a quarantine facility for Americans who are exposed to Ebola in Congo. However, Kenyan authorities have not yet approved the proposal. The move comes after an American medical missionary working in Congo tested positive for Ebola and was flown to Germany for treatment, along with several others who were exposed.
Why do Americans think that their lives are so much important than the lives of Kenyans, so that they establish a facility in Kenya that is meant for only Americans? If they must be allowed to open that facility here, then it must be a facility that serves every human being in Kenya, Kenyans and Americans alike, but not restricted to quarantining only Americans.
Regional governments are also stepping up surveillance to prevent the virus from spreading across borders. The outbreak remains difficult to contain due to delayed detection, insecurity in eastern Congo, and the absence of an approved vaccine for the Bundibugyo strain of the virus.
In India, the Gujarat Health Minister has also confirmed a man from Congo and 3 others in contact with him have been isolated in Ahmedabad. All right, and moving on, 9 people are reportedly missing and feared dead following a chemical tank explosion at a packing facility in the state of Washington.
Authorities have confirmed that at least 2 people have been killed, while adding that the chemical from the ruptured tank has contaminated the Columbia River. Fire department officials say that 9 people are yet to be recovered. They also said that the recovery efforts would be slow as the environment remains extremely hazardous. Authorities added that there is no clarity as to where the missing people are located after initial search operations.
We can also confirm that 1 individual transported from the scene on Tuesday succumbed from their injuries bringing the total number of confirmed fatalities to 2 of those transported. Operational conditions, it still remains active and it's extremely hazardous in the recovery environment. Recovery operations will continue as the conditions safely allow. It continues to be incredibly difficult for us on the incident and everybody that's involved.
I want to outline that recovery efforts started after our operations on Tuesday. We have declared this incident a transition from rescue to recovery as of this morning.
The tank which imploded and ruptured at the Nippon Dinnerware packaging facility in Longview, Washington, contained white liquor. It's a chemical solution of sodium hydroxide and sodium sulfide, which is used in making paper pulp.
Well, the fire department officials said that around 570,000 gallons of chemical substance have leaked away from the tank following the implosion. Furthermore, they added that the contamination has entered the Columbia River following the test of water samples. Officials say they have not identified any negative impacts to the surrounding air quality.
The component of the Columbia River is one that the Coast Guard has been here from the beginning with us, as well as our ecology and environmental protection team. They are working those informations, but they have not provided anything to the Unified Command about concerns in the Columbia to avoid and areas to stay away.
Authorities say that around 25,000 gallons remain in the tank, but said that it is stable. Washington's governor has called the incident as the deadliest industrial tragedy in the state's history.
All right, next up, here's a quick look at images drawing our attention around the world. Here are some freeze frames. Take a look.
And with that, it's time for us to slip into a very short break. More news and updates will continue on the other side. You're watching World DNA. Be right back.
In this rapidly changing world, is your health keeping pace? Best practices and breakthroughs busting the hype with real insights. The timeless power of yoga and ancient healing. Good food, good mood. Small steps, big impact. Your health matters. Only on WION World is One. Because nothing matters more.
Get the latest updates.
Destroy their
breaking
missiles
news.
And raise their...
Credible, clear, continuous. Experts across aisles. Diverse voices, one platform. WION World is one. In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures, and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter, because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world, a 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week creating the maximum impact. Watch WION Wide Angle at these times on WION. World is one.
WION, India's global voice. The channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one. From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Prime Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
WION asks what matters. The question the world wanted answered.
We're having a lot of racist comments coming from the United States against Indian Americans. So this would at least be supervised to India US relationship. What's your take on that?
Look, I'm sure that there are people that have made comments online and other places because every country in the world has stupid people. I'm sure there are stupid people here. There are stupid people in the United States that make dumb comments.
One question, one exchange, global reactions. When WION asks, the world follows. Get the WION edge.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching World DNA with Diksha. I'm Shivan. Lots more to discuss. Let's start with the headlines.
US carries out new strikes in southern Iran after Trump warns of further action if Tehran doesn't agree to a peace deal. Iranian media reports explosions in Bandar Abbas, while US media says forces downed drones and hit control stations near the Strait of Hormuz.
They thought they were going to outweight me, you know. We'll outweight him. He's got the midterms. I don't care about the midterms. Look.
Donald Trump says he's not worried about the midterm election pressure over the conflict with Iran, emphasizing that Iranian leaders miscalculated if they thought elections would force Donald Trump into a deal.
Nobody's going to control it. It's international waters, and Oman will behave just like everybody else, so we'll have to blow them up.
The US President says the Strait of Hormuz must stay open to all nations and wants Oman to behave or face US military action if it sides with Iran over the control of the waterway.
US military says it struck a suspected drug trafficking boat in Eastern Pacific, killing 2 men as part of an ongoing anti-smuggling campaign that has reportedly killed nearly 200 people since last September.
Israel's military issues an evacuation warning for residents of Tyre in southern Lebanon, saying it will carry out operations against Hezbollah in the area. Urges people near certain buildings to move north of the Zahrani River.
Russia and Afghanistan sign military technical cooperation deal during the International Security Forum in Moscow. Afghan Defense Minister meets Russian Security Council Secretary, highlighting growing ties between the two countries.
Death toll from US chemical spill expected to hit 11 after a tank implodes at a Washington paper plant. 2 are confirmed dead, 9 are missing and feared dead. 9 others were injured in the incident.
Cuba's parliament seeks international support over fears of possible US military action, warning that it would destabilize the region, while saying that it remains open to dialogue with the US based on respect for sovereignty.
Oil prices climbed on Thursday after fresh US strikes in Iran renewed fears over shipping disruptions through the Strait of Hormuz. Brent crude topped $96 a barrel, while central banks remain alert to rising inflation risks which are tied to higher energy costs. Well, Karnataka Chief Minister Siddaramaiah is all set to meet Governor Thawarchand Gehlot. This is later today, and amid reports of elevation of his deputy, D.K. Shivakumar as the new Chief Minister.
Well, before meeting the governor, Siddaramaiah will hold a breakfast meeting with members of the state cabinet where he is likely to announce his resignation as Chief Minister. The developments, they follow a Congress High Command meeting where a decision on Shivkumar's elevation was taken, ending a prolonged power struggle in the state. A meeting of the Congress Legislative Party is also expected later in the week to elect the new leader.
Now, to oversee the transition, Congress General Secretary in charge of Karnataka, Randeep Surjewala, is in Bengaluru. Siddaramaiah is also likely to address the media in Bengaluru and formally announce his decision.
The developments gathered momentum after the leader of opposition in the Lok Sabha, Rahul Gandhi, held a closed-door meeting with Siddaramaiah in Delhi. The meeting reportedly lasted more than 40 minutes, during which Rahul Gandhi is believed to have stressed the need for a generational shift in the Karnataka Congress leadership.
Now, Siddaramaiah has played a central role in projecting the Congress's social justice and backward class outreach nationally. Under his leadership, Karnataka also became a political battleground for the Congress. Congress attacked the centre over issues such as tax devolution, alleged Hindi imposition, the national education policy and rising fuel prices.
With the 2028 Karnataka Assembly elections approaching, the Congress leadership is said to be keen on ensuring a smooth and carefully managed transition to avoid backlash from Siddaramaiah's support base. And West Bengal's new crackdown on illegal immigration is now showing its first big impact on the ground.
Scenes of chaos and uncertainty are emerging along the India-Bangladesh border in West Bengal. Scores of people identified as undocumented Bangladeshi immigrants. They've gathered near the BSF's Hakimpur checkpost in North 24 Parganas to cross back into Bangladesh.
Visuals from the border show groups of men, women and families standing near the checkpoint as security personnel monitor the area. Officials say many of those gathering at Hakimpur had been living and working in different parts of West Bengal and even started moving towards the border after the state government intensified its crackdown on illegal immigration.
Well, the first BJP-led West Bengal government has launched a statewide identification and verification exercise. It is aimed at tracking undocumented foreign nationals, removing them from official records and preparing them for deportation. Authorities have also started creating a detention infrastructure to process those identified during the drive. And this is the first major ground impact of the BJP government's new Detect, Delete and Deport drive targeting illegal Bangladeshi immigrants and Rohingyas in the state.
Now, Chief Minister Suvendu Adhikari directly referred to the situation at Hakimpur and said illegal Bangladeshis had gathered at the checkpoint in Wasirhat subdivision. He urged officials to speed up the deportation process.
पुलिस को हम लोग बता दिया जेल में भेजने का जरूरत नहीं है. देश के रुपया में खाना खाएगा, कपड़ा देगा, मेडिसिन देगा. एक दामाद है ये लोग. जल्दी जल्दी भागो. जल्दी जल्दी भागो नहीं तो जो करना है सरकार करेगा.
The current crackdown gained momentum after the BJP government issued a notification on Saturday. Now, it was issued based on guidelines from the Union Ministry of Home Affairs. The order directed district magistrates to establish holding centers for suspected illegal immigrants before their repatriation to Bangladesh.
Well, within just 48 hours of the notification, the first two holding centers became operational in Malda and Mushirabad districts. Officials have equipped these centers with CCTV surveillance, security personnel and basic facilities for detainees. Under the new framework, authorities can hold suspected illegal entrants for up to 30 days while they verify identities, collect biometric data and upload information to central databases.
Now, the situation in these border districts remains highly sensitive. Both Malda and Murshidabad shared long international borders with Bangladesh and have historically remained under the security spotlight due to concerns over cross-border movement and infiltration.
এখানে আমরা থাকতে পারছি না, আমাদের কোনো কাগজপত্র নেই, তাহলে আমরা থাকবো কি করে? ওই রাস্তায় মালটাল কুড়িয়ে খেতাম। ও যখন ঢুকেছিলাম মানে দালাল দিয়ে ঢুকেছিলাম আর কি। তারা আমাদের কাছে 800-900 টাকা করে নিয়েছিল, নিয়ে পার করে দিয়েছিল।
আমার মানে আইডি কার্ড সবই আছে। আমি এসেছিলাম এখানে মানে বন্ধু বান্ধবের মানে একটা চাকরির জন্য বন্ধু বান্ধবের সাথে। পরে আমি চাকরি পাই না, এখন আমি দেশে ফিরতে চাই। এখানে সুবিধা হচ্ছে কিছু? না, এখানে কিছু সুবিধা হচ্ছে না। তুমি চাকরি পাওনি ওই জন্য আমি ভুলবশত এখানে এসে পড়ছি বন্ধুদের সাথে। এখন আমি যেতে পারছি না, কিভাবে যাব এখন?
This is also not the first time that such scenes have played out at the Hakimpur crossing point in November 2025. Thousands of suspected illegal Bangladeshi immigrants had gathered at the same border checkpoint after the launch of the special intensive revision exercise in West Bengal.
The developments in Dhaka will be closely watched, and with more than 80% of the India-Bangladesh border now under BJP-governed states, there are growing concerns that large-scale deportations could strain bilateral relations just as both countries attempt to stabilize diplomatic engagement. And Nepal's National Human Rights Commission has recommended legal action against former Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli and several senior political leaders.
And this is for alleged human rights violations during last year's Gen Z protest. The commission held the political leadership directly responsible for the crisis, citing their decision to ban social media during the Gen Z protests in September 2025 as the primary catalyst for the subsequent violent escalation. The rights body has sought legal action against ruling Rashtriya Swatantrata Party chairman Rabi Lamichhane, accusing him of unauthorized escape from jail amid the unrest, and advised the formulation of new laws to prosecute those responsible. It suggested restricting the political careers and travel of implicated figures.
Well, a detailed 29-page report implicates Oli and several others in rights violations linked to September's demonstrations, which resulted in over 70 deaths. Released politicians, including Oli, were previously arrested but freed due to insufficient evidence. The report has also urged legal reforms, including penalties of up to 6 months imprisonment, a fine of up to 300,000 Nepali rupees, and also the establishment of a special court to handle such cases.
Well, the NHRC raised concerns about the involvement of others, including RSP members who were recently elected to Parliament, and about senior security officials. It abstained from recommending action against the Nepal army despite identifying lapses in their duties. And in Pakistan, the government may hold office, but the real power still wears the military uniform.
Now a move to restore Lahore's historic Hindu and Sikh era names has collapsed under pressure. It began as a symbolic gesture, a plan to revive fragments of Lahore's forgotten past. Ancient names, historic roots, echoes of a city that once belonged to many faiths and communities. But in Pakistan, even history can become dangerous.
Well, in Pakistan, the Punjab government, led by Chief Minister Maryam Nawaz Sharif, had approved a new plan to restore the original names, but now, under the pressure of General Asim Munir, the decision was quietly reversed.
Now, proposed changes reportedly included Islampura once again becoming Krishan Nagar. Sant Nagar was to be replaced as Sunnat Nagar. Dharampura could return in place of Mustafabad, while Ram Gali would have replaced Rahman Gali. Authorities were also considering restoring names such as Lakshmi Chowk, Lawrence Road, Queen's Road and Outfall Road.
Well, that was the plan backed by historians, urban planners, but now under pressure, Punjab Chief Minister quickly backed away from the initiative. Officials softened their language, clarifications followed, and the restoration drive suddenly lost all momentum. But the retreat has fueled bigger questions. Who really governs Pakistan?
This incident once again exposed the fragile limits of civilian authority in a country where elected governments often struggle to act independently when the all-powerful military pushes back. And critics say the message from the latest U-turn is quite blunt. Governments may have changed in Islamabad, but the final call still comes from somewhere else.
Clearly, despite being an elected government, Maryam Nawaz has little power. General Munir's veto highlights a permanent Pakistani truth. Politicians may form the government, but the military rules the state.
Inshallah, you will see that we will. Balochistan, you think this 50.
All right, breaking news coming in. The Trump administration has placed additional sanctions on Iran as part of an economic pressure campaign.
And this time targeting the country's newly created agency that is trying to control shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. The sanctions target Iran's Persian Gulf Strait Authority and any person or entity which is cooperating with the agency that approves transit in the strait and charges tolls.
It's the latest development we're tracking for you. The Trump administration, while negotiations are on, sporadic spurts of violence being seen in the Strait of Hormuz, the Trump administration has now placed additional sanctions on Iran as part of an economic pressure campaign. This time, targeting the country's newly created agency that is trying to control shipping through the Strait of Hormuz.
And the sanctions target Iran's Persian Gulf Strait Authority and any person or entity cooperating with the agency that approves transit in the Strait of Hormuz and charges tolls. And in other news, America's inflation problem just hit a historic milestone.
US inflation breaks a new record by staying above the Federal Reserve's target for 5 years. The Fed's preferred inflation gauge, the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index, or the PCE, Price index rose 3.5% in April from a year prior, and that is the highest reading since June of 2023. Most strikingly, it marks 60 consecutive months that inflation has stayed above the Fed's 2% target. 5 full years without a single break in series. This is the longest such streak on record in the modern era of inflation targeting.
Well, the Fed formally adopted 2% as its official inflation target in January 2012 under then Chair Ben Bernanke, and before that, the bank had used 2% as an informal benchmark since the mid-1990s. And here is the key context. Before the pandemic, inflation spent most of the 2012 to 2020 period at or below the 2% mark. The Fed rarely had to worry about overshooting.
The current 60-month run above target is entirely without precedent. The streak began during the pandemic-era price surge and has simply never ended. For the Fed, this is deeply uncomfortable. Its entire credibility rests on keeping prices stable. That promise has now gone unmet for 5 straight years.
Interest rates have been kept elevated to fight inflation, yet prices remain stubborn. Economists say that there is no clear sign that inflation will return to 2% anytime soon. Supply chain pressures, sticky services inflation, and strong consumer spending, they continue to push prices higher. Now, for ordinary Americans, this means 5 years of their money buying less than it should. The Fed's target was supposed to be a floor and a ceiling, but right now it only looks like a ceiling that nobody can reach.
The European Central Bank, ECB, has warned Eurozone lenders they must increase cybersecurity investment.
And this as new generations of AI models raise fears over more sophisticated cyber attacks against the financial system. Well, ECB Vice President, he said that banks need to better understand the risk posed by advanced AI systems which can identify software vulnerabilities and potential security weaknesses.
Well, the warning, it comes as regulators around the world, they grow increasingly concerned about the cybersecurity risks linked to rapidly advancing artificial intelligence. New large language models, including Anthropic's Mythos, they are viewed by some cybersecurity experts as capable of identifying flaws in software and legacy computer systems. That could create major challenges for the banking industry, which still relies heavily on older technology infrastructure.
Now, the ECB Vice President, Dave Guindos, said that ECB has been questioning Eurozone banks for weeks about their level of preparedness. He said officials also held a meeting with lenders this week, which included a presentation from a US bank that has had access to Mythos AI. The ECB officials said banks must improve their understanding of how these systems work and introduce new cybersecurity protections to defend against AI-driven attacks.
De Guindos and this is what he said, I quote, "We have to invest more and investment has to be pervasive. It's not only for the large banks, it's as well for the small banks." Now, he added that cybersecurity is becoming an increasingly important issue for the global banking system and even described the need for greater investment as a long-term structural challenge.
All right, and now shifting our focus to the world of sports, there's hardly ever a day when the 15-year-old Vaibhav Suryavanshi bats and doesn't rewrite cricket's record book.
Wednesday was no different. India's teenage batting sensation has broken one of Chris Gale's IPL records and was just whiskers away from breaking another one. Suryavanshi has now surpassed the universe boss record for most sixes in a single IPL season. The teenager, during his blitzkrieg against the Sunrisers Hyderabad, smashed 97 of just 29 balls, an innings that included 12 sixes.
Well, those dozen maximums took his sixes tally to 65 this campaign, 6 more than Gale's record of 59, which was set 14 years ago. When the swashbuckling left-hander was just 1 year old, to put Suryavanshi's feat into perspective, Gale took 456 deliveries to reach 59 sixes. Suryavanshi got there in just 263 balls.
Well, the milestone-filled knock did not stop there. Suryavanshi also brought up a 16-ball half-century, the joint fastest 50 in IPL playoff history, matching former India batter Suresh Raina.
Well, the 15-year-old has also become the youngest player ever to score 600 runs in a single IPL season, breaking the previous record held by Rishabh Pant, who achieved the feat for Delhi in 2018 at the age of 20.
He's also the first ever to score 600 runs in a season at a strike rate above 200. And all this set the stage for Suryavanshi to break the record for the fastest century in IPL history. At 97 off 28 balls, the history books looked ready to be rewritten because the teenager was just 3 runs away from surpassing Gale's long-standing IPL record. The Jamaican had reached his century in just 30 balls back in 2013 when Suryavanshi was only 2 years old. But he fell in the very next delivery and stood still in the middle of the park. And with him, the entire new Chandigarh stadium, for they had just witnessed one of the greatest innings in T20 cricket history. At 100 years old, Chilean ballet teacher Evelyn Cordero still walks into her ballet studio in Santiago with the same passion that she has carried for decades.
From teaching students to dreaming about dancing in her sleep, the veteran ballerina continues to prove that age is no bar to grace, movement and love for the art. More about this in our next story. Take a look.
I even think I've got out of bed in my sleep and started dancing. And I dream that I'm dancing. I do these beautiful leaps, touching the ceiling. I don't know. I lift off the ground, then the turns. I do a ton of turns. When I did turns in my dreams, I'd get to the ballet studio and start doing the turns. And they came out wonderfully.
That's all we had for you in this edition of World DNA. But before we slip into a very short break, let's take a look at some of the top climate stories making headlines across the world. Stay tuned, you're watching Beyond World as well.